Hi everyone, I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com and today I'm interviewing Marian Schembari. Marian is a social media consultant working with people to improve their online profile through blogging, Twitter and Facebook. She's a great traveller and is currently living in New Zealand. So welcome Marian.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh no, it's great to have you on the show because I've been hearing about you for ages now and just on your blog and no, it's really good. So maybe you could start by telling us a bit more about you and your background in publishing and social media.
Okay, well, my background, like you said, is in publishing, doing book PR, and I kind of landed in publishing, doing a little freelance work for HarperCollins. Kind of long story short, when I graduated from university, I really wanted a job at a major publishing house, and I ended up taking Facebook advertisements out to kind of encourage these houses to hire me, and it worked really well. I got that job in HarperCollins within a week, and then I got a full-time job at a book PR firm in 3 weeks, which was fantastic. But through those advertisements, I got to know a lot of people in publishing and a lot of authors. And one thing kind of led to another. And through those ads, I ended up working freelance for a lot of major publishers in New York, for a lot of authors. And I think I probably did authors specifically, only authors in publishing, for about a year. But now I kind of tend to do all creative. So I've worked with photographers and web designers, basically, like you said, helping them build their platforms online, so using Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, blogging, LinkedIn. It kind of depends on their goals, but it's really fabulous, and I've met a lot of really cool people, and it tends to be 50-50 self-published authors and traditionally published authors, which is really fun.
Yeah. Oh, well, just tell us a bit more about that then, because obviously you've been in the industry. Is it now true that any author, regardless of whether they're traditionally or self-published, they must have a platform in order for publishers to, sell books, basically?
I'm going to say yes. However, there are a number of very amazingly fantastic, famous authors who have zero platform whatsoever. So it's obviously not 100% necessary, but publishers are now publishing less books. It's just how it's working. So to have a platform to send in, I mean, your query obviously has to be really good. I mean, that doesn't change. But if you have a platform and you say, hey, my blog gets 20,000 readers a month, or, hey, I've got 5,000 Twitter followers and they'll all buy my book, but I tell them to buy my book, that kind of attitude, kind of embracing the fact that publishing is a business and your art, your work can be amazing. But if you have a platform to back that up, that's really going to help you big time, especially if you're kind of so nonfiction especially. I think it's probably less important for fiction authors, but maybe don't quote me on that. But basically, I find that nonfiction authors tend to do really well if they keep a blog about whatever topic they write about. And having that blog as kind of an extra content for the book and a way to kind of get integrated in the community that you're writing for, I think that's really going to help to get published, but then also sell books once you are published.
No, fantastic. Okay, so let's get into it. So a lot of people talk about this social media strategy, and I know you don't like the consultant, the strategist term, but that's basically what it is now. It's not just about getting on there and having fun. I mean, although it is fun, it's about having some kind of method to the madness, isn't it? So what type of strategy should authors and writers be putting together?
I definitely think strategy is kind of a very broad term, which is why I like the quotes that you used. The thing is, strategy is really personalized. So if you're really shy, maybe creating YouTube videos as part of your social media strategy probably isn't the best idea on the planet. So you do need to really think about your personality first of all. So obviously you're a writer, so you write. So keeping a blog, I always think, is really great. But if you're so busy writing your book, you're going to update your blog once a month, then that's a huge waste of time. So you need to think about your personality. So if you write a craft book and you want to maybe keep a blog but you're a little bit busy, so maybe you want to guest post for other blogs and just link them back to your website for your book. Or let's say you are completely outgoing and you just kind of want to show people little snippets of the crafts that you're doing and post videos once a week, then that could work. So thinking about your personality and the time that you have to devote to it, and then also what you do in your spare time. So I've worked with clients, and kind of one of the biggest things when they have their own blogs that I tell them to do I spend a lot of time reading other blogs, and that accomplishes a couple things. The first one being to create relationships with those bloggers, so they might want to review your book or feature your book or do a giveaway. It also gives you new ideas, which, you know, every writer can use. And commenting, obviously, as I'm sure you know, commenting on those blogs is always a big thing. But I've worked with people who don't know the first thing about blogs, and I can teach them about it, but it doesn't mean that they're going to go out of their way. You know, I read, 20 blogs in the morning, and that's how I start my day, but some people don't. It doesn't work that way for them. So thinking, again, about the time that you have to devote to this, and writing kind of those three things down, your personality, the time you have, and the kind of medium that you want to work with, that's really going to help you get started in your strategy. And the next thing that I find really important is choosing the platforms that you want to work with first. So when I first started my blog, I just started blogging. That's all I did. My mom was the only one who read it. And then I slowly got into Twitter. And then I slowly got into LinkedIn. And then I slowly got onto YouTube. And I still haven't gotten on my own Facebook fan page. And I think doing it like that, I was so overwhelmed when I started learning that I thought I had to do everything at once. And then I did everything half-assed. I mean, I didn't start my mailing list until, 6 months into when I started my blog. But I didn't use it, and I was just paying money for this mailing list that I never even used. So if I had thought beforehand, okay, I'm going to spend 6 months on the blog, and now I'm going to spend, 2 months learning Twitter and really get that going, and then I'm going to do the mailing list. If I had done it that way, it would have saved me a lot of money and a lot of time. So kind of planning these things out beforehand, I think, is probably the first thing, absolutely, that anyone, author or not, needs to accomplish when they're trying to create a social media strategy.
No, that's brilliant tips there. And it's good that you say it takes time. And I think everyone needs to realise that. And I guess one of the questions, I get a lot is, but if I spend this time and then this platform disappears, what happens? Yeah. What's your answer to that?
Well, it's so interesting that you asked that, because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I mean, there are new platforms coming up all the time, and something like MySpace is no longer relevant at all. Well, it depends on what you're doing. If you're a musician, it totally is relevant. However, I think that it would be very stupid to not jump on a bandwagon as popular as Facebook, which has over 500 million people, because you think that someday it's going to not be working anymore. I mean, I just think that's silly. I mean, yes, it takes time, but it's going to be years before, Facebook took years to get going, and it's going to take years to fade out. So it's just a little silly to just not do something because, it's a fad. Fads are fads for a reason, but also solely relying on one platform is stupid for that reason. So it's stupid to rely too much on it, but also stupid to not rely on it at all. So I know one business owner whose entire website is their Facebook page. They sell things from the page, it's their home, it's where they send everyone, and I think that's really silly, because not only, Facebook isn't going to be around forever. I'm not going to pretend that it is. But on top of that, Facebook is constantly changing. They just changed the pages this month, and everything, her entire welcome page has been completely ruined. So only relying on that, at the end of the day, you always need a website. No matter what it is you're doing, I really don't care. You need some kind of home base that you are entirely in control of. So yeah, I think Twitter probably won't be around forever, and something new is going to start up in 6 months, and who knows how marketing is going to work in 5 years, because it's changed so much in 1 year. But at the same time, you need a main home base. That's kind of my biggest piece of advice. But definitely dabble as much as you can. If you think something sounds really cool and it's just starting up, definitely give it a go. But do know that you should, I hate to say have your fingers in lots of pies, but maybe 1 or 2 places I think is a good way to start, just to ensure that you're not going to completely screw yourself over.
Yeah, and I always say that too. It's basically you have to have your own site to drive people back to. And
yes.
And you own your list, and you can own your own blog and your own website. So people should do that. No, that's fantastic.
Definitely.
Okay, so we're going to assume that people are trying these things already. We're not here to convince people that these things are necessary. I do this all the time. So what we're going to do is assume that people are trying it, but they're not very successful. So let's take blogging as the starter. Most authors are now considering it. They're told they have to by their agent or their publisher. So what are the top 3 problems that you see on people's blogs, and how can people fix them?
Okay, the first one, always, is they're not consistent. They're not consistent in their posts. And honestly, I'm really bored of hearing authors say that they don't have time to write, because they make time. Authors make time to write their books. It's how it works. But they don't make time to write a 500-word blog post that it doesn't need to be. Separating writing your book and writing a blog post is really important, because you don't write a blog post the way you write a book. It's just not how blogging works. And taking time to read other successful writers' blogs, there's a ton of them out there. All you need to do is Google author blogs and see what pops up, and you get so much. And you need to, choose your niche and spend a lot of time thinking what you want to write about, and you can start slowly. But so many authors, I go to their blogs, and they haven't updated since December of 2008, and even before then they had 6 blog posts. And it doesn't work that way. And if you don't have time, if you don't prioritize writing a post, once a week, you obviously aren't that interested in what you're writing about. So you need to rethink your strategy and your niche before you start writing. But at the same time, give it a little bit of time, see what your readers respond to, but making sure, post once a week. And if can be crap, honestly, at the beginning, I don't really care. I go to my first couple of blog posts when I started writing, and they're horrible, and I want to delete them because they're so bad. But it did get me in the right direction. So the first one is to start posting consistently. The second is I see a lot of authors being too conservative in what they write about, and not in terms of, I think that authors should be themselves and write the way that, they usually write. However, I see a lot of authors, not putting their email addresses on their websites because they're afraid of spam, and I see a lot of authors, they close down comments because they're afraid of what people might say. And I found through many authors that I've worked with, and I love authors, you guys are awesome. However, a group of I found a lot of authors to be very conservative and very, kind of unsure or kind of unwilling to try new things. And publishing is a very conservative industry, and I understand that. But I've seen so many writers complaining, oh, well, agents aren't getting in touch with me, or no one's really responding to me. And I go to their websites and their comments are closed, and there is no way to get in touch with them. And that just seems a little silly to me. So definitely kind of being open and letting people engage with you. Try not to be freaked out, because there are some trolls on the internet, I'm not going to lie, but there are some really lovely people, and you're going to make some amazing relationships, as I know that you've developed. So I think that, just kind of being open to people talking. You can delete really crappy comments, honestly, and if you put your email address on your website, you can do it in a way that you won't get a ton of spam, but closing yourself off is not a smart strategy. And I've completely blanked on the third thing I was going to say.
No, but I think
I think the big two are being open to your readers and posting consistently. I think that those are the biggest 2 things that too many authors, I think, ignore.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because this morning I spoke to a hospitality conference on social media, and the first question was, this guy puts his hand up and he goes, but how do I control what people say about me?
God. Oh my God.
And I just went, okay, that's kind of not the point,
Not the point at all. It's something I hear a lot. I had I had a potential client email me and ask all these questions and say, but what if people say bad things about me online? And kind of my first response to that is, if people saying bad things about you, it means there are a lot of shitty people online. It's just sorry, excuse my French. But sometimes, people say nasty things, and it's unfortunate, but it's part of being online. But on top of that, if people are constantly saying bad things, it says a little bit more about your business than it actually says about them. So you need to fix it. So it's a good way to get feedback. I know it's a little different with writers because it's so subjective as opposed to like bad service at a restaurant. But unless you're an incredibly famous author, I very, very rarely see negative reviews about a book that are really scathing on something like Twitter. But on top of that, doesn't matter if you're online or not, people are going to say those things. You can be on Twitter and respond to it and create your own platform, or completely ignore it and let it blow out of proportion. So it's better to be online and be able to talk to those people than not be online at all. That's just a big mistake.
And I did answer, burying it in positivity is a good idea,
Yes, absolutely. Just honestly, so anytime someone says something negative to me on Twitter, I always respond, really, really nicely, and they're always really, because they forget that they're talking to a real person, and because it's online, they tend to, be free flowing in the negativity, but bearing it in positivity. I love that because it actually does work really well.
Yeah, and I should say to everybody listening, I've had a 99.9% positive experience in the last 3 years. So,
Yeah, definitely. It is usually, stuff. Honestly, there's only a couple naughty people out there, but otherwise you'll be so blown away by the experience of just lovely people supporting you than you will with, annoying people.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to Twitter, because you love Twitter.
I love Twitter.
As do I, and that's how we connected. And I see that you do Twitter profile critiques. So let's assume that these authors aren't finding Twitter very successful. What should they do to, make their profile better or get better at Twitter?
Okay, well, the big thing is your bio, because when you're on Twitter and you start following someone else on Twitter, they get an email saying, Bob Smith is following you on Twitter, and they get your little picture and they get your bio. So have a picture and have a good bio. And a good bio is very, very subjective. So be yourself, but just tell people what you do. Don't, honestly, so many bios, like someone says, like, their bio is following the rainbow. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, why would I follow you? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Or people say, like, author of, book X. And that's it. And I'm like, well, tell me a little bit about book X. You spent a ton of time writing it. You must be passionate about it. Make me excited about it. So I see a lot of bios that either don't make any sense to me whatsoever. People with no bios, which is just, don't even talk to me. That's like the biggest Twitter sin. Or bios that just completely lack in passion. And bios that are in the third person, don't ask me why, this is like a really huge pet peeve of mine, but because it's like a social atmosphere, you wouldn't go up to someone and says, her name is Marian Schembari and she does blah, blah, blah. You wouldn't talk to someone like that. The whole point of being social on Twitter is to connect with them one-on-one, and writing about yourself in the third person is a little silly. So yeah, bio's definitely the most important thing. And then personalizing your profile so you have a really great avatar, and not of your dog and not of your logo. You can do it of your book cover, but if you have more than one book, I always like it to have it actually be your author photo. And then having a personalized background, which for my authors, I generally do have their avatar be their face, have their background be some kind of collage of their book covers, which I always use this example, but I was in a library once and I was looking at books and I recognized a book cover from an author that was following me on Twitter, so I got it out. I knew nothing about it, but having that, where people are very visual, and having that recognizable image is really important in terms of selling books. So yeah, personalizing. And when it comes to tweets, I can go on and on and on. But basically having the bare bones of your profile set up and interesting and engaging and fun, that's really kind of the first stepping stone to being successful on Twitter.
No, fantastic. And I guess, you're a very enthusiastic, positive, seemingly outgoing type of person. What type of attitudes do you need to be successful in social media? Because it's not just about being outgoing, is it?
No, and I honestly will tell you, when I started this 2 years ago, I had no idea what I was doing, and I can do one-on-one, great. I'm great at meeting people, just kind of, again, one-on-one, face-to-face. I am horrible in groups. I stand in a corner and I'm on my cell phone and I pretend that I'm texting because I cannot talk to people in groups. I'm just horribly shy. So you don't need to be incredibly outgoing. You need to be friendly. You need to be nice. And you need to be moderately interesting. So tweeting about what you had for breakfast once is okay. Occasionally, if I bake something really delicious, I'll tweet about it. But unless you're like a health food blogger, maybe tweeting about your daily meals is a little silly. So the kind of personality that you need to have, I don't think it matters. I think that people I've met in real life who are extraordinarily shy have the most engaging personalities on Twitter that I've ever seen. So your personality, as long as you're yourself, and I know that sounds silly, but sometimes I'll see Twitter profiles of life coaches, and I think, God, this is the corniest stuff I've ever read, and I think it's really foo-foo and just like, follow your heart, and to me, I think that's really lame. But they have tens of thousands of followers who all love that stuff. So as long as you're doing what you're doing, you can't please everyone. Some people don't like the language that I use, and I lose those followers, and that's okay, because I'm myself. all the people that follow me are okay with me being myself, and that feels really, really good. So try not to emulate other people. Just kind of talk the way that you would talk to your friend. Realize that your grandmother may or may not see your tweets. So don't be a complete jerk. Being nice is always good. And being yourself. I think that personalities differ so much on social media, but if you're comfortable with what you're writing and putting yourself out there, I think you will get it back in spades, definitely.
And what do you think about the branding, sort of personal branding aspect of things? As in, we all talk about being authentic, but it's not wholly authentic, is it?
No, it never is. It never is. And the whole concept of personal branding, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I still don't really understand what the hell it means. Like, I honestly don't understand it. Like, visually branding yourself, so like having a logo, I guess, keeping a consistent voice. I mean, honestly, I think that you obviously, like I said, you want to be yourself. But I swear significantly less online than I do in real life, so I am censoring myself a little bit. I don't, when I have a really bad client, I'm not going to share that. Like, that's not particularly smart. So I think you need to think about your audience. So my audience doesn't know a heck of a lot about social media. So my audience isn't actually on social media. I just like doing it because it's fun and because it shows my potential clients that what I do works. So personal branding, I find to be a very difficult concept, but basically I think visually, and I'm not much of a designer, but visually using images of yourself. Putting your face out there, making you seem recognizable, making you seem like a real person, I think is important. Having a consistent design, I think is important, and just considering your audience. So if you're trying to get a book deal, maybe, and if you think, I don't know, you found that literary agents all tend to be really outgoing, I don't know, try and be really outgoing. But at the end of the day, I would think less about the way that you think you should be and just be the way that you are. I mean, that's horrible advice now that I'm saying that, but I think personal branding is a very difficult concept, and I don't think people should stress about it too much, honestly.
So another question I get a lot, which I also find quite funny, is how do I get as many Twitter followers as possible immediately? What advice do you have for people on that one?
Get over it. It's not going to happen, honestly. Like, that's just such a silly goal. Like, why would you want thousands of followers who, don't care about what you have to say? You can get thousands of followers that do care what you have to say. I've seen you do it, and I'm slowly starting to do it. And it took me 2 years to build up 4,000 followers. 2 years, yeah, a little under 2 years to build up 4,000 followers, and that required tweeting every day and following new people every day. You can do it quickly by using an auto-follow program. I do not, under any circumstances, recommend that because you get a lot of spam, mostly porn and money-making schemes, which is just, it's going to make you hate Twitter, so what's the point? I did with a client, I helped him get like 900 followers in about 2 months, and I was really proud of this, but it required three things. He tweeted a lot. He tweeted out valuable tips every single day, 7 days a week, and people retweeted those. And when you get retweeted, more people you become more visible. So he was tweeting valuable stuff. We followed 5 new people every day without fail. And on top of following 5 new people, we talked to one of those people. So a lot of times you just follow, 20 people at once and you forget about them. But if you go to each person and you just go through their stream and say, oh, well, they're tweeting about their dog. Oh, look, they have a German Shepherd and I have a German Shepherd. Let's talk about that. Or they tweet about a TV show that you really like. Have a conversation with them about that. But just following people and ignoring them isn't a way to get them to follow you back. You need to engage with them. And then finally, he got kind of like a follow Friday from a very powerful Twitter person, and that really helped him get his followers. So I hate to say rely on A-listers because I hate the term A-listers, and I don't think that you should rely on anyone. However, if you just make an effort to build relationships consistently, not just, once a week, let's do 1 billion people at once, but being consistent and being not just pimping out your book, but actually talking about stuff that, might be interesting to people. Tweeting out tips, being valuable, talking about your day in a way that's totally unboring. Those kind of things can help you build up a profile fast, but you're not going to get thousands of followers in a couple days unless you're, Neil Gaiman. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree with that. I've been on Twitter, what, like 3 years now? I think 3 years, 2 or 3 years. Anyway, a number
That's
of
pretty
years.
impressive.
But I've done exactly the same thing, basically useful things every 2 or 3 hours, scheduled every day,
Nice.
24/7, and
Yeah.
like you say, follow back. And I could have had a lot more if I did some of those scammy things, but basically
No, I didn't like that.
didn't. And I reckon pretty much, again, 99% of my followers are in my market, you know, writing,
and that's
publishing.
really important. It's
Yeah.
really, really important.
Exactly. And I would say, you know, and it's not like I'm very big on Twitter, but I do get people all the time emailing articles to tweet out, and it can be quite annoying. But I do look at most of them, and I will tweet out good articles. But what a number one thing that annoys me is when people don't have their Twitter handle really obviously.
Oh my God!
Page.
Yes. Oh yes, I understand that big time. I don't really understand why you wouldn't do that.
Because I always like to quote people, you know, I always want to say by at whoever, and if I can't find it, I don't use it. I just don't use the article.
Making things as easy as possible for people. So like on your blog post, having a retweet button. If you don't have it, I'm not going to retweet it. It's how it works. I don't have time to go hunting down your Twitter handle, cut and paste the link, then shorten it, then cut and paste the title. No, I'm not going to do that. So unless you're making it easy for people, you're not going to do it, or they're not going to do it. So.
No, fantastic. And lastly, another question I always get is how much time do I need to spend on all of this? Question.
God, yeah. It's a fair enough question, honestly, because you don't want to spend a ton of time on something if you don't have the time to do it. It depends, and I know that's one of those sitting on the fence, vague-ass answers, but it does. You can create, like some of the videos that I create on YouTube take me an hour, some of them take me 10 minutes, and it depends the kind of message that I want to put across that day. Again, starting slowly. So I spent maybe 10 minutes a day on Twitter when I first started out. And then I realized it wasn't growing as fast as I wanted it to grow, so then I spent 20 minutes a day. And right now I probably spend about half an hour a day on Twitter. Maybe a little less. It depends. I schedule a lot of stuff, meaning that I don't need to be constantly checking in. Schedule it out in the morning, respond to a lot of stuff, retweet the things that I want to retweet, and then forget about it. So sometimes that can take 5 minutes. It's not a big thing. Facebook, I actually don't spend that much time on Facebook, but for one of my clients, I did kind of a Twitter Facebook combined package, and he probably spends 20 minutes a day on both, and I think that's a really manageable amount of time. It's when you're creating longer content, so videos, blog posts, guest articles, those kind of things, that take up the most amount of time, but those are also the biggest things, the things that have the most impact. So my blog, I spend maybe 5 hours a week on my blog, and I only post twice a week, so I think if I was posting more than that, it would definitely be longer. But it pays off. The majority of my clients come through my blog. My posts get shared, and it makes me feel good, and I have amazing conversations with my readers. So the time that gets spent, it took a long time to build it up. It probably took about 6 months before anyone other than my family was reading my blog. But once it started growing very slowly, and then all of a sudden it grew really fast. So patience does pay off, absolutely. But yeah, it depends how many platforms you're taking on.
No, fantastic. Okay, so finally, where can people find you and all your products and services online?
Okay, so my URL is marianlibrarian.com, and Marian is spelled with an A. And basically my blog is just the main page, and you can sign up for my mailing list, and I do kind of a Dear Abby weekly newsletter where I answer reader questions only to people who sign up for the newsletter, and that's completely free and really cool, and you can just sign up in the sidebar. And then services, which range from video critiques of people's profiles to monthly social media coaching, that's just on the services tab of my website. It's very easy to find.
Fantastic. Well, thanks ever so much for your time, Marian. That was great.
Thank you.